welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're jumping into accelerated learning, and I don't just mean speed reading.
Right. We're really talking about how top performers, the best of the best, actually build skills, solve what seem like impossible problems.
And develop capabilities way faster than, well, than most people.
The source material we're digging into for this deep dive, it's a really fantastic guide. It kind of cuts through the noise.
Yeah, it doesn't really offer hacks, does it? It's more about fundamental strategies.
Exactly. And they're drawn from this surprising mix of fields. I mean, everything from professional football to cancer research, even children's books and physics.
So our mission here is pretty clear. Unpack the most valuable insights from this guide specifically for you.
Think of it as like a shortcut to getting really well informed on concrete ways you can genuinely accelerate your own learning, your own growth journey.
Well, get ready for some really engaging stories, some facts you might not expect.
Oh, yeah. We've got lessons from people like Peyton Manning, Dr. Seuss, some pioneering cancer scientists.
And even a Nobel laureate physicist who was apparently also a serious bongo player.
Haha, yeah, that too. Adds a bit of color.
This guide, it really aims high. It covers how to develop talent faster, grasp tough concepts quickly,
Break down massive problems, replicate how experts think, and maybe, just maybe most importantly, how to sidestep those common learning pitfalls.
yeah, the mistakes we all make.
Right. And it also shows you how to learn powerfully even when you're busy or feel limited by constraints.
Which is most of us, right?
Pretty much. And how to zero in on what truly matters, spark creativity, and make learning a natural, sort of consistent habit. It's quite comprehensive.
Wait, let's dive into this first key idea. It starts with this incredible story about Peyton Manning. Picture this scene.
Okay.
Late in a critical fourth quarter game. Manning's at the line of scrimmage, seconds before the snap. He's scanning the Ravens' defense.
And in that split second, he just sees something. As he described it later, something just felt wrong.
Off, yeah. The defensive lineman, it hinted at a blitz, but the play they had called wasn't designed for it.
So in about 4 seconds, just 4 seconds, he processes all of that.
He analyzes every defender's position, compares it to the play call, recognizes that hidden signal, the tell for the blitz.
And then just yells the audible, "Alley, alley," changes the whole play.
And the result? A perfect spiral, 78 yards downfield, game-winning touchdown.
Wow. The defense didn't even touch him.
4 seconds. Now, that wasn't luck. And the guide makes it clear, it wasn't just raw talent either.
Right. That instant processing, that was the direct result of, thousands and thousands of hours of experience, deliberate practice, relentless film study.
His brain wasn't magically faster. He was just trained to instantly pick out the crucial information.
And this brings us right to a concept called selective attention. You probably know it as the cocktail party effect.
Ah, right. Where you can focus on one conversation in a super noisy room.
Exactly. Your brain filters out all the irrelevant background chatter.
And that's precisely what Manning was doing on that field. All that experience had wired his brain to know instinctively what movement was the critical signal, the blitz tell, and what was just noise.
He knew what to focus on and, crucially, what he could safely ignore.
That ability to just laser focus on the relevant cues, that's a hallmark of experts everywhere, isn't it?
In any field, their brains aren't necessarily processing more information, but they're incredibly efficient at knowing which information matters.
Okay, so let's talk about hacks. We live in this world that's just obsessed with them, right? The quick fix, the trick.
We're the thing that supposedly bypasses all the hard work.
But then you look at actual top performers. LeBron James prioritizes 12 hours of sleep for recovery. Kobe Bryant took 800 shots a day.
And Peyton Manning spending thousands of hours in that film room. It's really the opposite of a hack.
Exactly. It's about relentless repetition, unwavering consistency. Genetics play a part, sure, but the guide really emphasizes that success isn't just handed to you.
No, it's built through this tireless commitment to the fundamentals and just putting in the work consistently.
And here's where Manning's story gets even more interesting. The real secret, or at least a big part of it, behind his selective attention.
It wasn't just the practice itself.
No. According to the source, it was his intense use of statistics and measurement.
Measurement, you mean like tracking his passing stats?
Yes, but everything. Touchdowns, interceptions, completion percentage, sure. But also his progress in the weight room, sprint times, everything was measured.
Okay, why is that so critical?
Because measurement provides concrete proof of progress. It's the feedback loop.
Ah, I see. So if you try something new, tweak your technique.
Right. And the numbers you're tracking actually improve.
And that's a clear, undeniable signal that the new thing is working.
Precisely. It takes out the guesswork. You only really know what's effective by measuring the results.
And if you do that consistently, like Manning did for decades, you get incredibly good at knowing exactly what to focus on. The data tells you what drives results.
So the core insight here is pretty profound, I think. Don't just practice consistently.
Measure constantly.
Right.
Use that feedback from the measurement to see what's working and what's just, wasted effort.
Experts focus their energy on what works, and you only figure that out by putting in the reps and tracking the outcomes.
Right. So if you want to get better, faster at anything, measure your results, commit to the reps. Stop looking for the magic hack.
Start tracking your progress.
Yeah.
Ruthlessly.
Yeah.
Okay, so measurement tells you what's working. But how do you push yourself to find new things that work, especially when maybe you feel limited?
Well, that actually leads us to this really powerful, almost counterintuitive idea from the source.
Which is?
How constraints can surprisingly make you better. And it starts with this great story about futsal.
Futsal, the indoor soccer game.
Exactly. Invented in Uruguay back in 1930 by a teacher, Juan Carlos Seriani. He needed a game like soccer, but something his students could play indoors all year round.
So he deliberately built in constraints.
Right. A much smaller playing area, often just a basketball court size, a smaller ball, and one that's less bouncy. And only 5 players per side, not 11.
Okay, so what was the impact of those limits?
It's fascinating. The tight space and the less bouncy ball. They force players to develop these incredibly creative, really precise ball skills. You're always in crowded conditions.
And fewer players means each person gets way more touches on the ball, right?
Dramatically more. The research cited found futsal players get something like 600% more touches per game compared to traditional soccer players.
Wow, 600%.
Yeah. And this game spread famously to Brazil. Kids there grew up playing futsal in the 40s and 50s.
So that intense, constrained environment just naturally honed unbelievable ball handling and technical skill.
Totally. And when those players moved to the big outdoor soccer fields,
That creativity, that technical mastery forged in futsal, that became their edge.
absolutely. It was a huge factor in Brazil's dominance, helping them win 3 World Cups between 58 and 70. The limitations of the game actually created their advantage.
That's a powerful principle. We often complain about constraints, don't we? Not enough time, money, resources.
Yeah, we see them as the enemy. But the guide argues they can be powerful catalysts.
They force you to make specific choices, cultivate specific talents that just wouldn't develop if you had unlimited options.
Constraints actively drive creativity. They accelerate skill development.
So sometimes the fastest way to get to that next level is by deliberately choosing the right constraints for yourself.
Yeah, it sounds weird, but it works. The guide lays out 3 basic steps for using constraints effectively. First step.
Decide on a specific skill you want to build.
And it has to be really granular, right? Not just get better at soccer.
No, more like develop creative ball handling. Or not be good at marketing, but write compelling headlines.
Specificity is key. Okay, second step.
Design a constraint that requires you to use that specific skill. The guide mentions 3 types. Time constraints,
Like a strict schedule or just less time overall.
resource constraints,
Fewer tools, different tools maybe.
and environmental constraints. Subtle changes around you that influence behavior.
Those environmental ones are sneaky powerful, aren't they? Like the example of using smaller plates.
Right. Leads to eating like 22% fewer calories over a year without even thinking about it.
Okay, so specificity, design the constraint. What's the third step?
You still have to play the game.
Ah, constraints aren't magic.
No. They direct your effort, focus it, but you still have to put in the time, get the reps in.
The author gives examples, right? Like setting a constraint to publish articles twice a week.
That forces you to write consistently. Or scheduling talks with absolutely no slides.
Forces you to be a better storyteller, rely on your narrative.
Or limiting weightlifting to just 3 days a week.
Makes you prioritize the most effective exercises. Be more deliberate with your time.
So these limits aren't about making things easy. They're about building a structure that forces creativity within the limits and consistent action because of them.
So the question for you listening is, what do you want to get great at? What skill do you want to accelerate?
And then, what constraints could you choose to place on yourself that would force you to practice that specific skill and act consistently?
It's a great framing. And this idea of constraints driving creativity, there's another fantastic example. Dr. Seuss.
Ah, yes, the famous bet. with Bennett Cerf from Random House back in 1960.
That's the one. Surf bet Dr. Seuss $50 he couldn't write an entire entertaining children's book using only 50 different words.
Only 50? That sounds impossible.
Right. But Dr. Seuss didn't just meet the challenge.
He created Green Eggs and Ham.
Which sold over 200 million copies. One of his absolute classics. He won the bet, and we got a masterpiece.
And it wasn't a one-off, was it?
No, the guide notes he used a similar strategy for The Cat in the Hat, limiting himself just to words from a first-grade vocabulary list.
It really hammers home the point. Deliberately setting limits often produces better, more creative results than keeping all your options open.
And the guide suggests two main reasons why. First, constraints just plain inspire creativity.
Like the basketball player who isn't tall has to find creative ways to score.
Or the parent with only an hour free finds creative ways to squeeze in exercise. The photographer with only one lens finds creative compositions. Limitations force you to find novel solutions.
And the second reason,
Constraints force you to actually get something done.
especially time constraints, they're like the ultimate weapon against procrastination.
Totally. The guide makes this sharp distinction. Professionals set a schedule. They produce on that schedule. Amateurs wait for motivation or the right conditions.
Right. The author mentions writing articles while stuck on a road trip or visiting family or on a plane.
Situations where, without that publishing deadline constraint, the work probably just wouldn't have happened.
We hear it constantly. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money, not enough resources.
But the guide encourages us to flip that script. Constraints aren't the barrier, they're just the reality.
Every single artist, athlete, entrepreneur, everyone operates within limits.
The key is acknowledging your specific constraints, figuring out what they are, and then deciding how you're going to work within them.
It's like that size of your canvas analogy. Dr. Seuss had a 50-word canvas.
Your constraints define the size of your canvas.
Maybe you only have 30 minutes for a workout today. That's your canvas for getting fitter. 15 minutes to write, that's your writing canvas.
$100 to start a side project. A diet limited to whole foods. Those are the edges of your canvas.
The limits set the frame. But what creative masterpiece you decide to create within that frame, that's entirely up to you.
Stop waiting for a bigger canvas. Just decide what you're going to paint with the tools and the space you have right now.
Okay, building on that idea of focusing effort and working within limits, what if the challenge just feels overwhelmingly huge?
Yeah, like where do you even start?
Exactly. This next approach from the source is about making problems smaller. And the story of cancer scientists illustrates this so well.
Right. For many years, the enormous goal was, finding a single cure for all cancers. Just massive.
But the real breakthroughs, they came when scientists decided to make the problem much, much smaller.
The guide highlights Dr. Sidney Farber. He's often called the father of modern chemotherapy.
And instead of tackling all cancers, he did what?
He narrowed his focus dramatically. He concentrated exclusively on treating leukemia first. Just leukemia.
So by focusing microscopically on that one condition,
he was able to make significant, real, tangible progress against it.
And here's the really crucial insight, Riley. The drugs and treatments discovered by focusing so intensely on leukemia,
they weren't just useful for leukemia. They laid the groundwork. They led to new solutions and treatments for other cancers as well.
So by solving the tiny focused problem, they generated knowledge that could be extrapolated, scaled up to the much larger universe of diseases.
The central idea is powerful. Attacking huge, complex problems is often most effective by first solving smaller, micro problems within them.
You focus intently on that small piece, you solve it, and then you use the knowledge and the momentum you gained to expand your understanding, expand your capabilities for the larger issue.
And then you repeat. Find the next small piece.
You see this in business too, right? Like Amazon.
Oh, definitely. They didn't start by trying to master digital commerce all at once. That would have been insane.
No, they started by selling books online. They mastered that specific small segment, the online purchase, the delivery of books.
Once they really understood that process, had a working model.
They applied those lessons to expand. Other product categories came later. They used the solution to the small problem to tackle the bigger one, but incrementally.
Yeah, step by step.
And the guide gives practical ways you can apply this small to large thinking to your own goals. Like, say, your big problem is, I want to become more creative.
Okay, that feels huge. Where do you start?
Well, a small solution, if maybe you're into photography, could be learn to take a truly excellent picture of just one simple thing, like a chair.
Just a chair.
Yeah. Master the principles, light, composition, form with just that single simple subject.
And then you take the lessons learned from solving that tiny, focused photography problem.
And apply them to taking better pictures of everything else. You build from that micro skill.
Okay, or what about exercise consistency? Big problem. How do I start exercising regularly?
Small solution. Forget complex routines for now. Just learn to consistently do one push-up today.
Just one.
Just one. Stick with that tiny action. Prove to yourself you can be consistent with something achievable before you try to tackle the bigger goal. Master the smallest piece first.
It builds momentum, proves capability.
Exactly. Or nutrition. Big problem. How can I eat healthy every day? Small solution. Don't try to switch your whole diet overnight.
Start by just eating one vegetable today.
Master the consistency of that one small addition for a couple of weeks. Then use that established habit as a foundation to add a second healthy food.
It makes these huge goals feel less overwhelming, more approachable.
Narrowing your focus like this isn't just simplifying. It's a really powerful mental model for tackling problems that feel like they're just too big to handle.
And there's a very personal side to that cancer story in the source material, isn't there?
Yeah. The 3-year-old girl diagnosed with leukemia. That was the author's sister.
Wow.
And she's alive as well today, treated with drugs that were discovered through Farber's foundational work. That strategy of starting small.
That really brings it home. How starting small can have a truly life-changing impact.
Okay, so shrinking the problem helps you get started. But what if you're facing a challenge where you're just not sure where to start? Or maybe you're worried about all the ways things could go wrong.
Yeah, that feeling of uncertainty or potential failure.
This next framework offers a completely different angle. It's called the inversion technique. It comes from Josh Kaufman's book, The First 20 Hours.
Inversion. Okay, what's the core idea?
It's deceptively simple, but really powerful. Instead of thinking about how to succeed, you actively think about how to fail.
You look at the problem from the complete opposite direction.
Exactly. So if your goal is, say, become a better manager, instead of asking, what should I do to be good? You ask.
What would someone do every day if they were trying to be a terrible manager?
Right. And the guide says this kind of questioning can uncover insights you just never reach by only focusing on the positive goal.
Kaufman uses this really in-depth example, right? Learning whitewater kayaking.
Yeah. So to figure out how to be good and safe at kayaking, you apply inversion. You ask, what would it look like if everything went horribly wrong?
Okay, so you list all the potential failures.
Flipping over, the kayak filling with water, hitting your head on a rock, losing your paddle.
Getting trapped in a hydraulic that's like a river's natural washing machine effect. Very dangerous.
And, the ultimate failure is dying.
It's a bit grim, a depressing line of thought, as Kaufman calls it.
But thinking through all those ways you could fail immediately points you to the absolute crucial skills and safety measures you need.
Right. You must learn how to roll the kayak upright. You must learn how to prevent it from swamping with water. You must keep hold of your paddle.
You have to understand river safety, scouting ahead.
And it even gives you a concrete shopping list for essential safety gear, flotation vest, helmet.
By obsessively thinking about failure, you identify the most important things to get right from the very beginning.
The key insight here is that inversion reveals these hidden barriers to progress. It forces you to confront potential problems from a totally different angle.
You're not just dreaming about success. You're actively preparing for the likely pitfalls.
Shane Parrish, who writes a lot about mental models, he expands on this with this great concept, becoming smart versus avoiding stupid.
I love that framing. He has that quote right. It is far easier to avoid stupidity than it is to create genius.
Exactly. Often you can actually accelerate your progress more effectively just by identifying and eliminating the errors, the mistakes, the unproductive habits that are holding you back.
Rather than always trying to build brand new skills from scratch.
The Jerry Rice example in the guide is perfect for this.
The legendary football receiver, he wasn't the fastest guy out there.
No. So instead of pouring all his energy into trying to build elite speed, which maybe wasn't his strength,
he focused ruthlessly on eliminating mistakes, running incredibly precise routes every single time.
By avoiding the stupid mistake of running sloppy routes, he was always exactly where he needed to be.
So when opponents made mistakes, his precision allowed him to capitalize way more effectively than if he'd just been, slightly faster but less reliable.
And there's another great benefit to this avoiding stupid approach.
Which is?
It significantly reduces risk. Trying to chase success sometimes involves high-risk strategies, maybe potential negative side effects.
Like taking stimulants for focus, that kind of thing.
Right. But preventing failure, like simply eliminating distractions from your phone when you need to work, that has very little risk, but still leads to increased focus and productivity.
It's the same problem, boosting productivity, just attacked from a different angle, one with much less potential downside.
So think about applying the inversion technique to a problem or goal you're facing right now.
Instead of just planning for success, ask yourself, what would it look like if this all went wrong? What are the most common or dangerous mistakes people make in this area?
And how can I eliminate those stupid things first? What failures can I prevent?
Ultimately, what seems to tie a lot of these different strategies together, seeing the field like Manning, using constraints, breaking down problems, avoiding mistakes,
It comes down to having the right tools in your mind, doesn't it?
which brings us to the power of mental models. And the guide introduces us to Richard Feynman,
Ah, Feynman, Nobel Prize-winning physicist, one of the greats.
and apparently a solid bongo player on the side.
Yeah, adds to the legend. But he was renowned for solving these incredibly difficult physics and math problems.
At places like MIT, Princeton's,
Yeah.
problems that stumped other really brilliant PhDs.
And when people asked him, how do you do it, he'd often trace it back to something specific he learned way back in high school.
His teacher gave him this advanced calculus book, right?
Yeah, and he picked up methods that weren't commonly taught in universities back then, specifically one called differentiating parameters under the integral sign. Kind of obscure.
And the key, in Feynman's own words, was simple.
He just used this one damn tool again and again.
His box of tools was different from everybody else's. He wasn't necessarily just inherently smarter.
He just had a different way of looking at the problem, a different tool that others didn't have in their toolbox.
And that's really what mental models are, isn't it? They're not some abstract theory.
No, they're simply different ways of looking at the world, different frameworks, different tools for thinking about problems. Feynman's calculus method, that was a unique mental model he possessed.
And where these models really become powerful, the guide argues, is when you have multiple ways of looking at the same challenge.
Right, like the example of tackling procrastination or trying to be more productive.
If you know different strategies, different models like the 2-minute rule, the Eisenhower box for prioritizing tasks, Warren Buffett's 25-to-5 rule for focusing.
You don't just have one option. You have a range of tools, a set of mental models to choose from depending on the specific situation you're in.
There's no single best way to be productive. Having that variety is key to picking the right tool for the job at hand.
This connects right to Abraham Kaplan's idea, the law of the instrument.
Or that old saying, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
The danger is pretty clear. If your set of mental models, your thinking toolbox, is limited to just that hammer,
Then your potential for finding good solutions to diverse problems is also really limited.
and there's an interesting twist the guide points out about smart people.
They can get stuck.
Yeah, they can be particularly susceptible to confirmation bias here. They might have mastered one really powerful mental model.
But then they try to apply that same model to every single problem, even when it's clearly not the right fit.
Sometimes deep expertise in one area can actually limit your perspective if you don't actively keep exploring other ways of thinking.
So the conclusion is pretty strong. Building a bigger, more diverse toolbox of mental models, that's one of the most powerful ways to seriously improve your problem-solving ability.
It's how truly brilliant people, like Feynman, often differentiate themselves. You need the full toolbox so you can choose the best tool.
Okay, so how do you actually build that toolbox? The guide suggests 2 main ways. First,
Read books outside the norm. If you're always reading the same bestsellers, the same stuff everyone in your field reads.
you're probably just encountering the same ideas, reinforcing the same models everyone else already has.
Right. Seek out seldom read books or books from completely different disciplines that might, overlap in surprising ways or offer unexpected perspectives. Look for answers where others aren't looking.
And the second way,
Actively create a web of ideas.
Yeah.
Connect concepts that seem totally unrelated on the surface.
schools tend to teach subjects in silos, right? History here, science there.
But the real world is interconnected. Everything bleeds together.
The guide gives this fascinating example, connecting the design of the Great Pyramids.
To the fighting rituals of animals. Seems like a stretch.
So think about it. Animals often rise up physically, make themselves look bigger to display dominance and power.
Okay.
In ancient Egypt, when a new pharaoh took power, what did they do? They built the tallest, most imposing structure possible, a pyramid.
Ah, like a symbolic way of rising up, showing dominance over the landscape, over their predecessors.
Exactly. Connecting fields like architecture, ancient history, animal behavior. It can reveal these deeper underlying principles about how the world works, how humans
Oh,
behave.
building those connections across fields strengthens your understanding.
It all comes back to that saying, don't try to tighten a screw with a hammer. Problems just become significantly easier to solve, and learning accelerates when you have the right tools.
Right mental models at your disposal.
Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's just quickly pull together these powerful ideas we've unpacked from the guide.
Yeah, it's been a lot. We saw how disciplined practice, combined with that ruthless measurement, creates selective attention and real expertise like Peyton Manning reading a defense.
We explored how constraints aren't really limitations, but can be deliberate choices that actually drive creativity and accelerate specific skills, whether you're playing futsal or, writing a children's book with only 50 words.
We learned that power of making overwhelming problems feel solvable by attacking them at the micro level first, like the cancer scientists focusing just on leukemia, or Amazon starting just with books.
And we discovered those unique insights you get from using the inversion technique, looking at challenges from the opposite angle, focusing on how you might fail to reveal those hidden barriers and build much more robust plans.
And finally, we really highlighted the critical importance of continuously building that diverse toolbox of mental models,
Mhm.
giving yourself multiple powerful lenses to view and solve any problem you face.
And these aren't just, abstract theories. They are practical, proven approaches
Yeah.
used by high performers across incredibly diverse fields.
To accelerate their learning, their problem solving, their skill development.
So as you think about your own goals for accelerated learning, for personal growth, which of these frameworks, these ideas, resonated most strongly with you?
How could you apply just one of these techniques right now? Maybe setting a specific constraint on a project you're working on?
Or breaking down a big, intimidating goal into the absolute smallest first step you can take today?
Using inversion to think through a challenge where you feel stuck? Or deliberately seeking out a new mental model from a field totally different from your own?
How could you use one of these to tackle something you were working on?
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. If constraints truly define the size of your canvas, what masterpiece will you choose to create within yours today?